All right. Hello, everybody. It's Jim, N4BFR. I am, as they call me, the lead instructor at Ham Radio Prep, and I can turn off my YouTube so it doesn't echo on me. Just want to make sure live was live, so we're up and running. That's great. Got some people who have joined in. It's nice to see you. So hello, Josh. Thanks for coming in today, and hello. Hello from Pahrump, Nevada. Nice to see you. I have driven by Art Bell's compound before in Pahrump, and I too find it very interesting. And Scott, greetings from Saranac, Michigan. Thank you. Nice to have you on board today. So we're going to be here for the next 45 minutes or so, talking about your ham radio exam question issues. So what we're trying to do here is give students an opportunity to discuss questions and issues they're having with questions on the ham radio exams, whether they be the technician, the general, and the amateur extra exams. And we're focused on U.S. hams since that's who we prepare our license courses for. So this is the second time we're trying this. We did a Facebook, YouTube. We did an exclusive version in our Ham Radio Prep Student Success group on Facebook, and we wanted to try and see how it might work in other forums. So this is another way for us to do this. And we want, your questions, and if you have questions that you're stuck with on the amateur radio exam, and B, your interaction. So we're really looking for this to be not just me talking to everybody, but students helping students. So if you see a question come up, and you want to try and help with that, please jump in the comments and we'll talk through it together. To get started here, what I've done is I have brought 3 questions with me to go through. So we've got one from each level of exam. And what I went through is we have data that tells us at Ham Radio Prep, every time you take a practice test, we log that data and keep it anonymous, but we anonymously use that data to see where students are having the most trouble with their questions. What are the most difficult questions for them? So we can improve our courses and we can try and help you navigate through it and be more successful. So we have that data, and I've gone in and mined that data and picked 3 very difficult questions that people have trouble with that we're going to go through today. And then, like I said, we'll take your questions as well over the next 45 minutes. So hello, JJR, and hello, Gene. Again, feel free to leave your comments and we will jump in as we go forward. But to kind of help get things started here, let me go ahead and flip and go through the first question that I pulled as a way to help you understand what we're doing here. So on the 2022 to 2026 technician ham radio exam, there are 400 plus questions. This is one of the few that people have the most trouble with. So 4 out of 10 students plus miss this question. The question is T3B02. That's the official license pool question number. And we covered this topic in our Ham Radio Prep lesson number 7. And the question is, what is the property of a radio wave? What property of a radio wave defines its polarization? Is it A, the orientation of the electric field, B, the orientation of the magnetic field, C, is it the ratio of the energy in the magnetic field to the energy in the electric field, or D, the ratio of the velocity to the wavelength? So I will just kind of take a breath here for a second and let y'all think about that and think of what you think it might be, and I'll show you the answer in a second. Okay, if you said the orientation of the electric field, you had the right answer. So that's the right answer. And so let's talk about why the orientation of the electrical field is the property of a radio wave that defines its polarization. And we should probably start by what polarization is. And polarization can be horizontal, or it can be horizontal, and let's do horizontal, or it can be vertical. It could also be circular. So this just basically means in what is the optimum orientation for the signal to travel. If you are, in general, if you are working on a signal, its orientation is similar to the direction of your antenna. So if you have a horizontal dipole, your orientation is going to be horizontal. If you have a vertical antenna, like you might have for your repeater, your orientation is going to be vertical. The best way to capture that signal would be to mirror the way that the orientation is. So if you're trying to get an HF signal, lots of times a horizontal antenna is the best opportunity to get that signal because it has horizontal wave orientation. Now, that's not always the case because of the way it refracts off the atmosphere and those kind of things. But for this purpose, and this is on the technician exam, so it's more along the lines of thinking VHF, UHF, that vertical antenna will be best oriented to be a vertical antenna. So if you're trying to work a repeater downtown, that's probably going to have a vertical antenna. You want to hold your HT vertically in order to have the best orientation for that signal. If you held it like this, now your antenna would be oriented horizontally. So the electric field is the important part of this answer. The magnetic field is also a field that is generated by the radio wave, but that is 90 degrees to the orientation of the electric field. So if you have a horizontal electric field, you have a vertical magnetic field. Not as important for what you're trying to do as far as getting a signal in, but the two are together, which is why this is probably a confusing question, because you have both the electric field and magnetic field to worry about. But the orientation of the electric field is the most important. So if you're working on this test and you're trying to figure out and have a good way to remember this question, knowing that it's not a ratio, that there's no ratio involved here, eliminates questions C and D automatically. So even if you don't think about the fact that we're not talking about velocity or the wavelength, just eliminating ratio gets you down to two questions. And then you just need to remember, I'm thinking about the electric field, not the magnetic field. So that is the driver behind this question. And so the property of a radio wave that defines its polarization is the orientation of the electric field. Let me show you this as a way of demonstrating. And this chart here on the right kind of shows you the orientation of the field. So you've got a magnetic field and an electric field. So if we said the blue was the orientation of the electric field, then you can see that's in one direction. And then if we said the red is the magnetic field, you can see that goes in the 90-degree direction. So as I said, a horizontally polarized antenna is one that's parallel with the ground. That's like if you're using an end-fed half wave, a dipole, those kind of things, those are parallel with the ground. Horizontal polarization, long distance weak signal, CW, which is Morse code, single sideband. All of those are good for VHF and UHF. And the reason we talk about VHF and UHF here is because, again, this is the technician exam, so it's not as deep into HF as other things. So as you're considering that, you want to consider what's going on. Vertical polarization, as I mentioned, typically used for things such as FM repeaters and simplex. So are there any questions on that you want to throw in? Go ahead and throw them into the chat, and I can pop them up and we can cover them. But while you're thinking about that, let me just do a couple of quick more introductions. MRG4646, hello. JJR from New York City, passed tech and general in first try with ham radio prep. You are welcome, and you did it more than I did, so congratulations on passing. Coos County, Oregon, from Gene. Gene, nice, welcome aboard. And we've got KF8EYE, who's studying for extra. Good, hopefully you'll bring your difficult extra question when we get to that part in just a couple of minutes here. All right. Again, it doesn't have to be on the topic of the question we're covering right now. So if you have a difficult question, drop it in the chat. And in the meantime, we will go ahead and talk about another question. Sound good? Okay. Let's flip on to talk about the general exam. So the general exam is the middle, it's the sweet spot, it's where you get a lot of HF privileges, but not everything. It's not as highly technical as the extra, but it is the middle level of exam. And this exam questions go from 2023 to 2027. The question that I pulled is in G4DO2, which in ham radio prep lesson, it's number 10. 41% of students miss this. So again, only 6 out of 10 get this right. 4 out of 10 get this wrong when they're taking practice tests. So that's why we're going to dive into it more today. And the question is, how does a speech processor affect a single sideband phone signal? So a single sideband phone signal, as you know, is an AM signal. And then from the sideband, you take half the AM signal. So an AM signal creates 2 sidebands, an upper sideband and a lower sideband. So if there's 2 sidebands and you only use one, that is a single sideband picture signal. And it can be an upper sideband or a lower sideband. So you'll see USB and LSB, both of them are SSB. How does a speech processor affect a single sideband phone signal? Does it increase peak power? Does it increase average power? Does it reduce harmonic distortion? You know what? I'm going to just start from the top and try this again. How does a speech processor affect a single sideband phone signal? It could increase peak power. It could increase average power. It could reduce harmonic distortion. It could reduce intermodulation distortion. And let's give 10 seconds for you to think about what you think might be the right answer, and then I'll show you what it is. Okay, so we have, the answer is B. It increases average power. And let's talk about why it does that. So what a speech processor is, and your voice in that single sideband signal is going to fill up about 2.8 kilohertz of audio. And you have a lot of different tones to your voice when you're talking. It could, you have low tones, baritone type tones and tenor type tones. And it's what kind of gives each voice its own little melody. So as you're talking, you have high parts of your voice and low parts of your voice. The speech processor does is it makes the lower parts of your voice, the stuff that's not as normally pushed out, a higher level in the audio. So it basically brings up the bass to make it higher as you talk. And that fills in the gaps in the signal. And so that increases the average power, because a single sideband signal varies, it varies its amplitude, AM, amplitude modulation, it varies its amplitude by the sound of your voice. So the more goody you can get into that signal, you're going to increase your average power. So if your low tones are really low, by and I say low as not loud. By pulling those up and increasing that, it will increase the average power of your signal, and more of your voice will be transmitted as you transmit. So it's filling in the gaps, which means it's not changing the peak power. Your highest tones, your loudest tones, excuse me, your loudest tones are still going to drive your peak power, but your middle and lower tones in your voice are going to be the ones that get pulled up and increase the average power in this. So it reduces the fluctuation from high up to high down to more of the consistent high. Filling in the gaps, not changing the peak power. So, what about harmonic distortion and intermodulation distortion? Distortion is a risk when it comes to signal processing. If you adjust your signal processing too high, you could create distortion. Harmonic distortion is the kind of distortion that is created by it creates multiple signals at different frequencies. So we talked about this a little bit in the last study hall. If you are sending a signal on 50 megahertz, it's going to also harmonically create smaller signals at 100 megahertz, 200 megahertz, and so on. That's a harmonic of 50 megahertz. Now, a speech processor really isn't going to do a lot to improve harmonic distortion because those harmonics are going to be generated anyway, and different things in the chain of creating a signal will be used to reduce harmonic distortion. So not really an impact of a speech processor. The other piece is reduces intermodulation distortion. Now, intermodulation is when one signal gets into another. So I'll go back to old school stuff. You ever be in for those who have worked in a corporate environment, you ever in a conference room and you sit down and you set your phone near the conference speaker, and right before your phone rings, you hear little noise like that in the conference speaker? That's intermodulation. Intermodulation is when two different radio signals interfere with each other. So my phone and my ham radio are interfering with each other. And it could be as simple as the radio's getting overloaded. So if I was walking around with my handheld and I was near my mobile radio and somebody was transmitting on a mobile radio and I'm near a handheld, I may hear part of that transmission, even if I'm not on that frequency, because it's getting picked up on internal frequencies in the radio and creating what's called intermodulation. So that's so speech processor really wouldn't help with that, wouldn't help with harmonic distortion. So if you take away the distortion question, then you're left with just two options, and you need to understand, is it peak power or average power? Now, if you adjust your signaling correctly, you could add distortion. So if you really crank up that speech processor, it's going to take that average power and push it way up near the peak, and you could create distortion, but it won't reduce distortion. So because of the word reduces there, that should tell you that it's not involved in this particular piece with the single sideband phone signal. So we got that. Start posting your questions on this in the chat, and I'll do a little bit more of an explainer, and then we'll say hi to a few more people and keep plugging away here. So as I mentioned, and this is how I wrote it in the course, the speech processor's job is to increase the apparent loudness of transmitted voice signals. You're increasing your average power in your sideband phone signal, which improves performance in the later stages of the transmitter. This is different than FM because FM modulates the frequency, so it's not as affected by the loudness. Amplitude modulation, which is part of AM, which is part of single sideband, does the apparent loudness of the signal as its modulating method. So by being able to increase this, you're increasing the average power. And that's why this is impacted in an SSB versus in an FM. So I mentioned this here a second ago. There's a related question on this, which is the next question on the exam, which is what is the effect of an incorrectly adjusted speech processor? That's where you get distortion, intermodulation, additional background noise. So you can make things worse by incorrectly adjusting your speech processor, but you won't make things better. You make things worse by an incorrect speech processor, but you won't make things better, which is what the original question said, right? Go back here. It reduces harmonic distortion. It reduces intermodulation distortion. An incorrectly adjusted speech processor does neither of those. You get an all of the above effect here on this question. So if you got thoughts or questions on this particular question, let me know, and we can get into it a little bit more. But let me go ahead and welcome in a few other people here while I watch for your questions in the chat. We got Dan, KM8DAD. Hi, Dad. Passed his tech exam in 2022 with a 100% score thanks to Ham Radio Prep and working on your general now. Do good until it comes to the math formulas. Dan, I will say that one tip that I give people when they're taking the general or the extra is that you can miss, if you're good at everything else, you can miss all the math on the exam and still pass. So I'm not saying don't do your best, but I'm saying you've got a 1 in 4 chance of getting it right. Maybe you just take that for those kind of math questions and you come back and say, hey, you know what? I'm good. And I'm going to go ahead and focus on whatever else it might be. Now, you passed your tech in 2022. Depending on when you did your tech in 2022, I may not have been your professor. I think it was in 2022 that I became part of the tech course. So I think that was my first course. I don't remember. I'm thinking about history now. But Dan, either way, congratulations, and I hope you're enjoying studying on the general. And if you have any other questions on the general, please let me know. But now we've gotten a couple of for you to hopefully remember there. And who else do we have? JJR says, since I've been licensed, I've also been into shortwave listening. Very interesting, and hear all kinds of things when the D layer dissipates. You know, shortwave listening is a lot of fun, and it's something you can do with most HF ham radios. For me, I like to, like one of the first things I do whenever I turn on a radio, I got a new antenna, is I'll flip over to the WWV shortwave station out of Fort Collins, Colorado. And that's at 2.5, 5, 10, 15, and 20 megahertz with standard time intervals, time of day, and other useless information. No, other good information. You can tune a piano from WWV. There's also, if you're really good, at the top of every minute, WWV, you'll hear a male voice announce the time. If for some reason you should hear a female voice, you're listening to WWVH out of Hawaii, which means the bands are really open. So tune over to whatever the closest HF band is and try and get some good DX, because that means DX is open. So there's a tip for you. Let's see. We got a question from MRG4646. On the app, there's a practice test, and then there is most difficult questions while studying for my general. While studying for my general and after the lessons, which section should I focus on? So I would say start and take a few practice tests. Do 3 or 4 and get your feet under you. Once you've done that, then flip into most difficult questions and see the areas where you're having trouble. So if you are working on, let's say you're in your general and you're doing really well, but you're not quite understanding, you're missing a lot of questions related to identification of electrical elements, capacitors, inductors, those kind of things, reading schematics. That's a big thing in the general course. If you get to that point where you're having that, then you can see, hey, well, I've got 4 or 5 difficult questions in this same section, you go back, you can rewatch the section, reread the section, kind of get yourself refreshed a little bit, and then go back and take more practice tests and go through the more difficult questions. So it's kind of a combination of the two, MRG. And if you have more questions on that, throw them in the chat and I will get to them in a minute. All right, before I go, take a drink of soda, which gives you an opportunity to tell any other questions you have about our current general topic or general exam in general. We got JJR Minimum License General. I have an HF radio, but I haven't hooked it up yet. Still need antenna and coax. We'll then do some HF and take the extra. That sounds like a good path. Love this hobby. I've also got a ton of handhelds. The other day I counted and I have 17 handhelds. So I probably have more than any human being needs, especially since it's just me. But yeah, maybe I'll start sorting through and culling down my handhelds a little bit at some point. But I hear you, JJR. So good luck on your HF stuff, and maybe you get out into a park and go have some fun with that. If you've got the radio, once you get the antenna and coax in, all those can be had. So good luck with that. Okay, let's go on and start talking about the amateur extra exam. So this is the most difficult, I won't say the most difficult, but this is one of the most difficult questions on the 2024 to 2028 amateur extra ham radio exam. The question number on the exam is E2 E07. So it's in group 2 and then section sub-element E question 7. In ham radio prep lessons course, it's in lesson number 10. And again, we're at about 4 out of 10 people missing this question. This question is related to digital mode operating. And there's 2 digital modes listed. How does Q65 differ from JT65? And your answers are keyboard to keyboard operation is supported. Quadrature modulation is used. Multiple receive cycles are averaged. And then there's the boogeyman answer. All of these choices are correct, which I've never actually gone in and looked at the test, but I'll bet 50% of the time that is not the answer. So maybe in the next, when we get the new technician questions, I'll go in and look and see how that holds up. Okay, so Q65, different from JT65. Think about what your answer is going to be. You've got 10 seconds and I'll reveal what the answer is. Okay, the answer is C. Multiple receive cycles are averaged. And did you get that? It doesn't look like JJR did. He said he thinks A, and I'll talk a little bit on why it's not that here in a second. So multiple receive cycles are averaged in Q65 versus JT65. So what we're talking about here are types of digital modes that are all in the WSPR, weak signal weak signal WSJT software. And WSJT stands for Weak Signal Joe Taylor, for the physicist Joe Taylor. So in the WSJT, there are things like FT4, FT8, and those kind of things. And there are 2 modes. One is Q65, one is JT65. And they are both of these 65 modes are related. And both of them are weak signal modes. So what that means, and pretty much all of the WSJT modes are weak signal. And what that means is generally the mode is designed for digital communications that is at or near the noise threshold of the radio. And because it sends long tones, it can be received and decoded over a period of time. So for instance, FT8, you're going to send a series of it's 18 or 20 characters. I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head. Let's say 20 characters. You're going to send a short series of characters, but that transmission is going to be over 15 seconds. So it's going to be almost 1 second per character of a tone being sent, or a combination of tones, and then those tones are decoded and displayed on your screen as words. Both of these, Q65 and JT65, are weak signal modes. So they're all in this WSJT software. The difference between the two is that Q65 has averaging. So instead of just taking one transmission and listening to it and decoding it, Q65 transmissions are sent several times and received several times of the same data in order to have multiple receive cycles. So in order to help improve this truly weak signal transmission. Now, where would you need something like that? So these are modes that are used for things like Earth-Moon-Earth communications, where you're trying to send a signal 250,000 miles to the moon and back, have it bounce off the moon, and have the receiving station potentially 12,000 miles away hear it. So being able to send those multiple tones and multiple tones is a good thing. The other piece here is meteor scatter. So you're going to try and bounce a signal off meteors and have it come back to Earth. Well, a lot of that signal is going to potentially be lost because as you send it up, not everything's a meteor, right? Not everything's going to bounce off and come back. So having weak signal decoding that is more robust is more helpful to being able to complete contact. So that's what Q65 does, and why Q65 has become more adopted for the meteor scatter and Earth-Moon-Earth operators than JT65 was. So it's kind of a transition called Q65, maybe JT65 2.0. I don't know if that's what the WSJT people would call it, but that'll give you at least some context on kind of where it is to where it went. So why isn't it quadrature modulation? Well, I'll cover that in a second. But why isn't it keyboard-to-keyboard operation? Well, when they say keyboard-to-keyboard operation, they're talking about live chat, kind of the things we're doing here in the chat for this video, where you can type in and I react to it immediately, or I could write back to you. So keeping a signal going back and forth so you could chat back and forth. That is more like a mode of RTTY or JT65, where you, RTTY or PSK31, where you're sending a short transmission, I'm sending a short transmission back and forth, and we can actually type what we want. These WSJT modes are often scheduled transmissions. So it's going to fire off a transmission every 15 or 30 seconds once I enable it. And so you can't really do much of a chat. If you've ever worked FT8, you'll just see it's kind of, here's your call sign, here's my call sign, grid square, thanks, see you later, and you've made a contact. So it's more along the lines of kind of scheduled and pre-made content versus a back and forth communications of a live chat. So if you're looking for live chat, there's definitely digital modes for that, like RTTY and JT65, or RTTY and PSK31, but JT65 and Q65 are not in that group. All right, so I promised that I would talk about what the Q meant, and there's quadrature modulation was one of the potential answers here, but it's not that. It's something called Q-airy, and this is a mathematical process where I'm not even going to read all of this, but there's an optimization algorithm that involves entropy and is used in it's used in information theory. So that's what the Q means. So that's why quadrature is kind of a red herring in that question. I don't want to completely call it a trick question, but it's not. Quadrature is not the reason for the Q in Q65. There are other Qs in ham radio, and I just thought it'd be fun to talk about them for a second. Q codes like QSL, and all of those came via the old telegraphy and old people pounding brass and coming up with standard codes. You'll notice that there are no call signs that start with the letter Q because Q is held out for these Q codes. So there's also QAM, which is quadrature encoding of multiple signals. That is kind of what your cable company does. So they encode multiple signals into one wire, and their transmission, along that wire, they're using frequencies from 5 to 1.2 gigahertz, and they encode them into that wire in a special complex way called QAM, and that's how your cable modem works and those kind of things. So that's where the QAM stands for. And then also in ham radio, there's the Q of an antenna for the quality of an antenna. But again, that doesn't impact Q65 at all. So you can kind of disintermediate these other Qs because Q65 is not cable TV. It's not a Q code, and it's not antenna quality. So you can rule that out in your mind as why it's not quadrature when you get to that question. So that is what I've got. And JJR, do you kind of understand why it wasn't A now? Why it wasn't keyboard to keyboard? Hopefully I hit on that pretty well. Let's see. What other comments do we have here? We can just dive into some general comments, and we got a few minutes to chat. Unless you have questions on this exam question or other exam questions, please feel free to bring them up as we go. But I'll pop up another couple of questions. We got another 10 minutes or so of the live stream. JJR has dozens of handhelds and got bit by the bug. It is very easy to get bit by the bug and just say, "Oh, look, I got this. It's cool. I want to try that." 2 mobiles, Yaesu FT710 Field, very nice. Nice setup. Get that antenna. You're going to have a lot of fun. And one of the things I like to say, JJR, is any antenna is better than no antenna. So I have made contacts from a literal piece of tinfoil that I made an ad hoc feed point antenna out of some bolts and wing nuts, and I rolled out a piece of aluminum foil out of the bag and set that up in a tree and made contacts to South America on. So it can be done. I've made contacts on a vertical antenna that I made out of Diet Coke cans. Just string 40 Diet Coke cans in a row, and sure enough, you can get a signal out to South America from Georgia. So any antenna is a good antenna when you're starting to think that way. Obviously, you want to optimize, but don't let that hold yourself up from getting on the air. Let's see. David asks, what is your favorite handheld? This is always a difficult question because I don't have just one. I got right here. This is the one that I've been carrying most lately. This is the ICOM ID52. I like this for its size and its color screen. When I first got bit by the VHF UHF bug, digital bug, I got into D-Star because D-Star was a big thing in the club I was in. So of the D-Star, DMR, and System Fusion options, I've always been more of a D-Star person. So I've got the ID52. But if you were gonna hold my feet to the fire and say pick one, I would probably pick the Kenwood THD 75. And the reason for that is not only does it have D-Star, it also has APRS. So I can go ahead and make some D-Star contacts. I can make FM contacts. I could pick it up and put a packet through the International Space Station, or just send a packet out with my location with the D75. Now, you're going to say, Jim, isn't that the most expensive ham radio handheld out there? And yeah, probably. I mean, you could get some Motorola's that are not specifically designed for ham radio that are in that price range, but I like it. So that's you asked me what's my favorite, and I think I will stick with the Kenwood for now until I see something else new and cool come out. But like I said, I have 17. I've got a nice. If I was going to do Fusion a lot, I have a nice Yaesu FT5. Is it FT5? I think so. I've got a nice Yaesu 5 handheld that I use for Fusion. I've got right now my current DMR radio is a Radioddity that I picked up. I like that a little bit better than the Anytone radio, but I think both are good. So that's what I use for that. And then if I just need a FM, I've got the Yaesu FT65 that works really just solid, no frills, no problems kind of radio. So that's what I'm thinking from a handheld perspective. David, thank you for the question. JJR said, yeah, he got why we were talking about it's not A. He appreciates the explanation, and there's a lot to learn in this hobby. So I've been in the hobby, I was trying to think the other day, 18 years. And yeah, you can go a mile wide and an inch deep or a foot deep and never do this. There are people who get involved in ham radio and say, you know what, I'm going to go all in on emergency communications. And that's what they're focused on. And they never touch an HF radio. They never do Morse code. They never do satellites. They got their piece that they like. Or you can say, I'm going to play a little bit with satellites. I'm going to play a little bit with CW. I'm going to play a little bit with HF. And wherever you want to go, you can go. And there's no reason that you can't just switch up as you go along. So maybe you say, you know what, I feel like trying something different. I'm going to do more digital modes. Like I have bought gear with the intention of doing more digital modes and doing more CW. And I have still stuck with sideband HF, but I got the gear and I'm ready to go when I get the time. Getting the time is half the battle. But JJR, thank you and enjoy. Got a boarding, a Baofeng maybe, and a Yaesu 70. Good. JJR's got an FT5, yep, and a D75. Great. So you've got multiple digital modes you can do. Let's see. I used HRP to get my general in April and my extra last week. Best study app ever. Woo, thank you. If you get the chance, can you tell us maybe is there a question that you felt like you got hung up on that you want us to talk about? That's why we're here. So we'd love to hear that. Bridgecom just came out with a new DMR NXDN radio. Okay, I saw that Bridgecom came out with a new radio. I didn't realize it was NXDN as well. So I might have to look at that in a little more detail because we're just talking today. Every week we get together, the content team for Ham Radio Prep and World Radio League, we get together and we talk about what videos we want to do. And we're like, well, maybe you want to do a new top handhelds for 2026, but we were struggling to come up with what new handhelds are out there to talk about. So I will take a look at the new Bridgecom. Thank you for that. Let's see. Next question. Why can't you access ComEd and satellites on the iPhone? It has to be on the website. Oh, you're talking about the two courses, the MCOM and the satellite courses. I am not sure about that. If you want to drop me a note, jim@hamradioprep.com, I will try and find out a little more detail for you. I do the writing and the producing and the talking to students. I do not handle the back end technology. So if it's not there, I'm assuming it's a technological reason for it, but I will check and find out for you if you don't mind dropping me an email. So thank you for that. Has to be on the PC, right? Got that. Okay. Tomorrow, Lynn, any chance you will offer a course for CW? We have talked about it a couple of times. Right now, we are in the process of gearing up to redo the technician course. So that'll be the next course that I write, and that will take me pretty much now till May to complete. As soon as that new question pool comes out right after the first of the year, we'll be totally focused on that. After that, we don't have a course settled that we're gonna do. CW could be one of them. I personally don't feel like I know enough CW to write it, but that doesn't mean I couldn't learn that. So that's one factor in us offering a course for CW. If you had something that you wanted to learn today, I hear a lot of good things about the Long Island CW course. And in fact, that's probably the one I would take if I was going to take a course to learn more CW. So don't have a specific answer for you on if we will ever do that, but I can tell you it's not in the next 6 months anyway. You won't see a CW course from us. All right, Chavez, KJ5HHT says, thank you, studying for extra now. A trucker and have a G90 with a 10-meter hamstick and a Bowtech 6.2 and a WASP hotspot. Love making contacts. Great, 73. That's all you need. I bought a G90 recently because I heard so many good things about it, and I got a good price on one. Took it out to a park and really enjoyed making contacts with it. So I say, yeah, get out there and have fun with whatever you can get your hands on. So that is awesome. WSPD, not WASPs. Got it. Thank you. Kenwood, TS850, nice classic radio. That's good. JJR, we were talking about new handhelds. Bridgecom Maverick. It's a rebranded Anytone AT-D90. Okay. D890. I will take a look at that. Might have to get one in there. Maybe I can ask Santa and I can have one for the holidays. That would be asking Santa James Cribbs, I think. We'll see if he's up for that. Hi. Let's see. E5A05, increasing Q in an impedance matching circuit. Oh boy. E5A05, increasing Q in an impedance matching circuit. Let me see if I do this. I gotta see if I can pull that up and not screw up the live stream. So hang on 1 second here. Do I still have the live stream? There we go. All right, hang on. I'm going to go here. Let me just double check that question one more time. E5A05. So I need to be in the extra course. E5A05. E5A05. What is the result of increasing the Q of an impedance matching circuit? Matching bandwidth is decreased, matching bandwidth is increased, losses increase, harmonics decreased. And the answer is A, matching bandwidth is decreased. So Q is the quality factor in this case. So this Q is how efficient is the circuit. And when we're talking about the circuit here, we're talking about the entire radio to antenna piece of the puzzle. So that is what we're trying to impact. So with a more efficient circuit, the matching bandwidth is decreased because the circuit handles the resonance better. So increased quality means matching bandwidth is decreased. And if you look back a little bit at you can find it on YouTube. We talked about antenna matching as it was related to antenna tuners in the general course. So there's a YouTube video there. And the idea is that the closer you can have the antenna match what the output of the radio is expecting, the more efficient your circuit's going to be. So this is another way of saying that, because the mismatch is impedance, and an antenna tuner is really an antenna matching unit. So that matching unit is trying to help the radio see the most efficient opportunity to transmit its signal to the antenna. The Q factor is that factor that makes it improved, and so you want lower matching bandwidth. You want the antenna tuner, antenna matching unit, to work less hard, so your signal is closer to your antenna circuit. So we're talking about everything from the pointy ends of the antenna all the way back to the radio, everything that's in there, any filters, any balance, anything like that. So, and the coax, of course, you want all of that to be as close to 50 ohms as possible. And that includes the antenna tuner. So the less the antenna tuner needs to work, the more matching bandwidth is decreased, which means your Q is increased, so you have a higher quality output. So I think that is what we're talking about for that particular question. And thank you for asking it. I appreciate it. I need to wrap up here. I've already run a little bit over time, but I got a couple of more minutes I can squeeze in here. So let me try and squeeze in just a couple of more comments here. JJR appreciates the emergency and SATCOM courses. Great, appreciate that. Don't know what we'll do as far as a long form course in 2026 once we get the technician done, but we are open to suggestions. There is one more long form course that's coming in the next couple of weeks. We're going to start rolling things out that will eventually become a long form course in February. So stay tuned for that. And I think JJR in particular, you might like what comes out. E5B08 and all the phase angle questions. So I talked a little bit about the phase angle question. I didn't quite get into phase angle, but I talked to Smith charts a little bit, and that covered the phase angle question. So what I'm going to do is 3v3. I'm going to E5B08. I'm going to add that to my list of items that we can get into in more detail in a future study hall. So stay tuned for that, and I will try and dig in. All right, couple of more minutes, and I need to run. TS430, very nice. Sounds like fun. Tamara, thank you. I've also heard good things about Long Island CW. 73U, KJ7HX. I like your call sign. Scott, could you elaborate on resistors, capacitors, and inductors? I can do it in, so my 20-second piece is, a capacitor is something that stores something in a circuit. So think about pouring water into a bucket. You're storing some water and letting it dribble out the other end at a different rate. So that is basically the capacitor is the bucket. And overly simplified explanations on all of these, but that's what we're trying to do. Resistor is something that just slows the flow of a power in a circuit, and that is sometimes simply because you want it to match up with a element like an IC. Let's say you've got 12 volts coming in at a certain resistance, and your IC can only handle a certain amount of resistance in. You're going to put a resistor in line, and you're going to help match it up to the IC. An inductor is really about resistance in an AC circuit. So the resistor I was just talking about is mostly in a DC circuit. An inductor is resistance in an AC circuit. But with inductance and capacitance, when you put those two together, you make magic, and that makes a signal that you can transmit. So the combination of the inductor and the capacitor are the two magic components that start to create a frequency that you can then generate signals with, put your voice or your FT8 or your CW over the top of it and transmit those. So inductor is a resistor in an AC circuit, and you realize that because they are both measured in ohms. So you're measuring resistance in ohms from resistors and resistance in ohms from inductors. Hope that helped. JJ, thanks for doing the live. Thank you. Appreciate you. We do want feedback on the live because we are going to consider kind of how often do we do these? What do we cover? Is it all the tech topic? Do we do them across all of our live platforms, or do we just do them in the student success group? So we're really just kind of piloting this at this point. So any and all feedback you can give us in the chat, in the comments after the lives, in our student success group on Facebook, in email to our support at hamradioprep.com. We definitely appreciate it, because that'll help us decide how often and how frequently we do those. So thank you. And then thanks, those are the most trouble you have. Great. So probably won't be doing another study hall until after the new year. So when we figure out what exactly we're going to do, I will work in the E5, B08, and related questions. So thank you very much for that. All right, I am out of time. So like I said, we want your feedback on, do you want more? Is the format right? How often do we need to do these? Is once a month enough? Is once a week not enough, kind of thing? And any additional thoughts? We're not trying to replace the course. We're just trying to give everybody a place to get in and interact on questions. So appreciate you being part of the pilot. And if you get a chance, please give us feedback. We definitely welcome your gift of feedback on this. I'm past time, and I'm going to run into what Andy wants to do here in a few minutes, so I need to get off by 2 o'clock. So I will say 73 to everybody, and appreciate you, and we will see you in a future study hall, hopefully. If not, we'll see you online. 73.